morning and welcome back to the Sage Sorority. I'm your host, Shantel. How are we all doing today? Happy Thursday. Okay, let's get into it. If you listened to last week, which was part 1 on how to be more interesting, you'll know we started unpacking what it really means to, in fact, be more interesting. Curiosity, micro adventures, reconnecting with who you are outside of your roles, and of course, asking better questions. Today, guys, we are picking right back up where we left off because being more interesting isn't just about what you notice or the inputs you cultivate. It's also about how you share your life. So in this episode, we're diving into storytelling, niche interests, throwing loops in your timeline. You guys know I love to fuck up the timeline, and the subtle art of charm. If part 1 was about building depth, part 2 is about how we express that. So get your coffee, get your tea, get your water, maybe your champagne, and let's get into this. So let's talk about something that can transform even the most mundane, simple experiences into compelling, interesting conversation. And that, my friends, is the art of storytelling. Because interesting isn't just what you do, but it's also how you share it, right? Most of us have raw material for great stories. We just need to sculpt it. We need to shape it. And most of us honestly don't know how. We tend to think of our lives as really boring, right? Like we do something and it just kind of seems normal. And that's often because we focus on the facts rather than like how it feels. And we tend to focus on like logistics rather than the actual moment of surprise or realization, right? The logistics rather than the moment of surprise or realization. Like I went to work today, traffic was a nightmare, but I got to work just on time. I got to work at the perfect moment. What sounds more interesting? What sounds more compelling? And here's the secret. Every quote unquote regular situation can actually become interesting if you find the right angle. That delayed train journey becomes a story about someone that you met who missed their important meeting and you ended up having a conversation with them. If you find the right angle, your food poisoning in Lisbon becomes a meditation on how strange and beautiful life can be. When you're sick alone in a foreign city, that's literally my story because I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the pod, but I did get wild food poisoning in Lisbon. I went to Portugal for 2 weeks, TLDR. I went to Porto, Lisbon, and the Azores, and I got the most insane food poisoning in Lisbon of my entire life. Story for another day. But it did teach me about resilience, about taking care of myself in the face of panic, being alone in a foreign city where you don't speak the language. How resilient can I be? How critical the choices can be, and can you make them on your own? The key is to learning to notice these moments as they happen and then, make them into something shareable. And I'm not saying that like hyper audit your life and then turn it into content. It's just more about paying attention. I know I keep saying that over and over, but because it's so true to what's happening. And when someone's asking you about your life and your day, like that's what you're sharing as opposed to the talk tracks that we have in our heads. Like, yeah, my day was good. I feel fine, et cetera, et cetera. I also like to keep a bit of a story bank in my notes app. One thing that I used to do that I've kind of fallen off with is I'm an iCal girly. Everything I do has to go in my iCal. I will even like backdate something. Like if I did something, but it wasn't in my iCal, I'll like put it so that I can always remember. And I like to be like, okay, what was I doing a month ago? What was I doing a year ago? Et cetera, et cetera. But what I also do is I will use some of that information from my iCal and then I'll go in my notes app and I will document like all the cool, fun, sparkly things I did that month. I don't document anything sad or anything depressing. I only document like fun experiences or moments that moved me. And it is such a good way, not only to track your month, but to track your year. So I haven't done it in a while, but for example, I would put, oh my God, like I went to San Francisco this month. I went to Dubai. I got chrome nails for the first time. I secured another partnership. I had a really fun brunch. I laughed till my stomach hurt at the Net, like whatever, small or large, as long as it was like a good, fun, sparkly memory, a positive memory, it goes in the highlights. And I'm telling you guys, game changer. Sometimes the months are a little light and that's okay, but it's just about, again, taking document of like what's going on in your life because the days are long, but the years are so short. It can be little observations, overheard conversations, things that made you laugh, moments that really stuck out to you as like funny, like I said, profound, or even inspiring. These don't have to be extraordinary circumstances. It's just regular life, right? But you're taking notice, processing, and shaping it into something worth sharing. The magic isn't really in having these incredible adventures, although that is magical in its own way, but it's in finding the magic in the story that you're already going through, the magic in your everyday. So obviously, I mentioned having like a highlight reel type of thing in your phone, in your notes app, but to truly develop this skill and get sharper at it is just really start to pay attention to moments that make you pause, even briefly. Maybe it's something someone said or a realization you had mid-conversation, a small kindness you witnessed, something that made you think, something that made you feel, I feel like is a really good one. Something that always makes me feel and immediately puts me in a state of gratitude and kind of focus is whenever I see a hearse go by. I don't live far from a funeral home. Every once in a while, I will see one and it makes me a bit sad, a bit touched, and it immediately puts me in gratitude and focus on the moment. Like, wow, I'm so lucky that I'm here walking down the street, whatever. That's just something that I can think of that comes to mind that literally always gets me into shape. But yeah, whatever it is for you, write it down, document it, keep it in your notes app. Don't worry about making it perfect. You just want to capture that essence and capture that feeling. Then when you're sharing it later, focus on the detail that made it stick in your mind. Was it because what the person was wearing? Was it the way you felt? Was it the way they said something? The contrast between what you expected and what actually happened, those details is usually where good stories live. And also, like, don't forget, okay? I'm not telling you to go out there and be like some narrator. The best stories don't always have to be the happiest ones. Sometimes the most compelling narratives come from failure, confusion, those awkward moments when your life doesn't go to plan. But people can also, and often do, connect with vulnerability and authenticity far more than they necessarily connect with buzzwords and someone who's elated 24/7. So it's just something to think about. So I know I've already talked ad nauseum about throwing a loop into your timeline, and I'm just going to quickly go over it again because I do think it's very important. You know, we have to talk about what this means and what I mean by deliberately disrupting your routine in small but noticeable ways. You know what? Most people live very predictable lives, and that can even become boring to ourselves, right? You wake up at the same time, you take the same route to work, you eat the same lunch at the same places, you order the same food, same type of Netflix shows. And it's not that it's bad, right? Routines can be comforting and efficient, but they can also make us feel like we are sleepwalking through our own lives. People have a different relationship with routine. They use it as a foundation, but they regularly introduce elements of surprise. This is what you want to do. Saying yes to invitations that feel slightly outside of their comfort zone. Sometimes that's slightly out of your comfort zone because it's the event that you're going to. Sometimes it's slightly outside of your comfort zone because it's slightly past a time that you would normally be out. All those things work. They take classes they're not even sure they'll enjoy. They travel to places that maybe they can't even pronounce. They spend half the time in a hotel, half the time in an Airbnb, whatever. Now, I'm heavy on this doesn't have to be about travel and you don't need a passport to fuck up your timeline. You can do that with something very simple. Like I said in the previous episode, taking a different route home, actually noticing what you see, going to a restaurant that you've never been to, or going to the same restaurant that you love and ordering something new, or going to the bar and saying, you know what, this is what I like, make me something special. Fabulous. I don't know, it just fills you with moxie. And I know that sounds like cringe, but I'm telling you it does. And I know it does because I've done that for myself and I immediately feel brighter, feel sparkly. I'm telling you. Just trust me on this. Again, the goal is not to stay constantly busy or to turn your life into some sort of performance art. It's really just to stay curious and to keep yourself slightly off balance in the best way. Maybe you normally wear flats and trainers to date night. Now I'm going to implore you to wear heels. You know, things like that. When you do things that surprise even you have more interesting things to talk about. But most importantly, you remain interesting to yourself. I make it a rule to say at least one thing a month that is different for me. Maybe that's going to a different class or pushing myself or hanging out with people that I don't normally hang out with or going to a new workout class because things can get samey very often. Small disruptions make you also more present. When you're doing something unfamiliar, you can't operate on autopilot. You just can't because you have to pay attention. When you're driving somewhere for the first time, you have to pay attention. When you're in a new workout class, you have to pay attention. Do you see what I'm saying? And that attention translates into richer experiences and better stories. And again, you remain more interesting to yourself. So pick something that you do the same way all the time and change it. Whether it's a different workout class, try a new coffee shop, walk through a different part of your neighborhood, whatever it is, take notice when you break your own patterns. This is something I am implementing in my own life. I have beautiful high heels and something has changed. I know that for a lot of people during COVID, they kind of just fell out of love with kind of like fancy dressing. And I still love to look good, but I notice my heel usage has really dropped. And it's tough when you're like commuter town because I don't really want to wear like nice heels all the way to the tube. And then on the tube, it's just all that kind of walking can be really tough. When you drive, it's a lot different. You can kind of have your heels in the car. You can whip them on right before you go to the venue. But there are lots of times when I take Uber and I'm like, if I'm taking Uber, I need to be wearing heels. I need to be wearing heels. It's something that I've been really telling myself for the last week that I need to create more opportunities to wear heels because I like the way I look in heels. I like the way the outfit comes together. I like the way my calves look. I stand straighter when I'm in heels. So yeah, that is a small way that I am changing what I normally do. I want you to cultivate some niche interests. I need you to pick one or two things that you find a little fascinating and kind of just go deep on it just purely for the joy of it. Could be a little bit of history, could be a little bit of art, could be a little cooking, baking, pottery, local history, whatever it is. You're not going to monetize this. You're not going to create content on it. You're just going to let this be pure curiosity. Just let your mind wander and let the research do its thing. Niche knowledge truly gives you fresh angles, unexpected dots that get connected, and literally reads as authenticity. Having niche knowledge does several things. It gives you unique conversation starters, right? When everyone's talking about politics and pop culture and the same Netflix show, you are able to bring a completely different perspective to the table, and you're able to connect dots in unexpected ways, right? Second, it demonstrates that you're someone who thinks deeply about things, who doesn't just skim on the surface. There's something wildly attractive about someone who can genuinely get excited about something niche as they do something more mainstream. The woman who knows about perfume history might also make fascinating connections to memory and chemistry and cultural attitudes towards femininity. The person who is obsessed with urban planning might have insights into psychology, economics, social behavior. That could surprise you. The key is to choose something that genuinely sparks your own interest, not something that you think will make you seem impressive. Authenticity is what makes niche interests charming rather than pretentious. Just start thinking about something you've always wondered about but never really pursued, things that you found interesting but never really researched, maybe why certain songs make you cry, or how they decide what goes in a museum, or what neighborhoods feel more alive and vibrant than others, or why do trees line this side of the street and not the other? I remember one time I was sitting on Mount Street. This is in Mayfair for those that are local. London has fabulous architecture and it's all very periodic, right? Like most architecture, you can kind of tell the age of it and what decade or what century. But on Mount Street and some parts of Mayfair, there's Edwardian architecture, which I didn't know at the time, but it's very unique and it's so intricate and so beautiful. And I was like, what kind of architecture is this? And why is it so sparse? Because other than a few spots in Mayfair and like in central London, you actually don't see a lot of Edwardian, also known as Baroque architecture, which when they kind of put that together, it's neo-Baroque. I was like, oh, that's why I love it, because it's just like so ornate and so beautiful. And that's because it spans from about 1901 to 1914. That's very short in terms of architecture. And it was a move towards lightness and airness and departing from your typical Victorian styles, which can be very dark, slightly gothic, very heavy. And it's a little bit more red and it's got high-pitched roofs and prominent chimneys. And it just looks very different, right, than the typical Victorian and Georgian houses that you find scattered throughout London. And it's so fascinating because it was influenced obviously by King Edward, but he was only in power, I think, for a very short amount of time. Honestly, don't quote me on this. So that's kind of why it came in and then it also kind of came out. And it also is tied into the rise of the middle class and booming in suburban architecture. It has a lot of like grand curves and fancy details. And yeah, I just find it so fascinating and so beautiful. And this is when the British Empire was truly at its peak. Anyways, that's just being curious, being present, noticing your surroundings, and taking your interest a little bit further. This is just about learning things purely for the joy of learning it. Some interests are meant to be pure curiosity and pure pleasure. And the purity of that is what makes it interesting to you and what makes you interesting to others. So I won't go on too hard about this point, which is the power of presence. We've talked about this. Real presence, no phone, no half listening, feels super radical now and very different. Give people your full attention. Give your own life your full attention. Taste the food. Taste the drink, look at the painting, clock the room. I want you to try and do one thing this week with complete attention. Either make a coffee, take a walk, have a phone-free conversation, just something that requires your full attention, or even something that you could do passively, but you're going to give it your full attention. That attention and that discipline leaks into everything. This kind of presence also makes you way more intuitive about people and situations. It really heightens everything. You pick up on things that others miss because you're not operating on autopilot. You notice the barista's tired smile and you ask if it's been a long day. You realize your friend is quieter than usual and you create space for them to share what's on their mind. Presence is a practice. It's truly a discipline. And like any discipline, it does require intention. Anything that you can do, try and do it intentionally, right? Even brushing your teeth. Have a conversation where your only job is to understand the other person and not to formulate your response. This kind of mindful attention seems very simple, but I'm telling you guys, it's actually transformative. People remember how you made them feel, right? And when someone feels truly seen and heard, they associate that gift to you. And finally, we are going to discuss the art of charm. And I've got a little framework acronym for you to think about when we talk about being interesting and the art of being charming. But first, let's actually describe what charm is, right? So charming, to charm means to please and attract someone or something, either through a pleasant personality and friendly behavior, or by possessing a magical, enchanting quality. A charming person is polite, engaging, and makes others like them, while a charming place, like a little cafe or an old cottage, is very pleasant, appealing, and visually attractive. Okay, that's straight from the Googles. Charm is not about manipulation, okay? And this is not about insecurity, and this is not about approval. It's ease and care and lightness and focus and attention. So here's my little framework that I think is super helpful. So charm, C, curiosity. Lead with a genuine question. Enough with the yes or no's, enough with the generic stuff. Lead with a real, genuine question. H, humor. Lightness, no eye roll, no attitude, not performative, just keeping it light, keeping it friendly, keeping it fun. Attention. You want to pay attention to names, preferences, the tiny details. Loop them into the conversation and bring them back. R is for reciprocity. Match disclosure with disclosure. No interrogations. Match vulnerability with vulnerability. No crash outs. Very, very, very important. And also match energy. It's a really good way to have a conversation with someone. If someone is animated and excited about something, slightly join them and elevate your energy to meet them there. It allows for such a richer conversation where that person probably feels significantly more heard than they would otherwise. And finally, M is for manner. You want to check things like your voice, your pace, your posture, your warmth. Sometimes we really ramble through things and we speak way too quickly. Slow down a little bit, take a deep breath, shoulders back, let your face show the story. Relax and let it flow. Charm is felt as safety and sparkle. And it's truly like invisible hospitality that you bring to a conversation. Being charming is like subliminally telling someone, hey, come here, come sit, let's talk. I want to know all about you. Another thing I just want to add in is that charm is not the same as flirtation. And I do think those two get wrapped up in the same kind of boat often. Charm is not sexual. It's not inherently sexual unless you choose it to be or want it to be. True charm is really just social generosity, like the sparkle that you bring to friendships and work and regular encounters. It's an intangible quality where people walk away thinking, wow, that person was magnetic, or that person was in fact charming, easy to talk to. Being interesting is feeding the mind, shaping your stories, and living with curiosity. Charm is how that gets transmitted to someone else. Warmth, wit, presence, and also a little playfulness, quirkiness. things like that. Finally, charm weaves naturally through storytelling, presence, and generosity. So it's not something you need to try on. It literally comes through. It gets transmitted when storytelling, presence, and generosity are all present. It truly feels like the final polish, if that makes sense. But to wrap it all up, what I want you guys to know about being interesting is that it's not a performance, right? It's not about impressing people or proving how fascinating your life is or how fascinating you are. It's about cultivating genuine curiosity about the world and your place in it. Interesting people are interested people, period. They ask better questions because they actually want to know the answers. They have interesting lives because they've taken the time to develop them. They notice things because they're present. They have good fucking stories because they recognize moments that are worth remembering. And this is the thing. All of this is entirely within your control. This has nothing to do with money. This has nothing to do with age. This has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with socioeconomic status. None of that. You don't need to be born with certain gifts or have access to extraordinary experiences. You just really need to approach your regular ass life with intention and curiosity. Being interesting is a byproduct of being curious, of staying open, physically, emotionally, psychologically, all of the things, and intentional about how you move through this world. It's about saying yes to experiences that intrigue you, even if they seem a little impractical or even a little inconvenient. It's about paying attention to moments that make you pause, asking questions that invite and solicit real, authentic answers, being present enough to notice the texture, the layers of your own juicy life. Do you see a trend here? So I've given you guys so many CTAs, a call to action, in the first episode that we discussed last week. And also in this one, we're going to run down a few more. Obviously, you're going to do things outside the norm, read something weird, go somewhere unusual, ask a better question, ask a deeper question, hang out with someone that you haven't seen in a while. And maybe if you hang out with this person and you guys kind of always work out or you always go for a coffee, maybe you switch it. Like maybe you go for a drink, maybe you go for lunch. Like that's another way to just add texture and to mess up the timeline a little bit. Try a food that you wouldn't normally eat, try a dish you can't pronounce, take a different route home, and actually notice what you see and share that. Document that to yourself, share that. If you're liable to forget, in the notes app, it goes. And see how people maybe respond differently to you and how you respond differently to them. Not because you're performing interest, right? I'm emphasizing this a ton because it is really important. But this is just about you genuinely becoming someone who's interested in the world. And remember, the goal this is not a competition. This is not to become the most interesting person in every room. The goal is to become interested enough in your own life that you have something genuine to share. You're curious enough about others that you can make them feel seen and present enough in your experiences that you're actually living them rather than just documenting them. That's how you become magnetic, not through performance or pretense, but through a quiet confidence, aka a soft power that comes from truly knowing yourself, staying curious, and being genuinely engaged with the world around you. I really hope that last week's episode and this episode resonates with you guys. I hope that I provided a lot of value because this is something that I think creates massive waves and ripples throughout your entire life in all areas. Home, work, play, friends, job, all of the things. I really think that is how you draw people in and you take the experiences that you're probably already having and you 10x them. I really, really, really believe it. I know that there was a lot between last week's episode and this week's episode, and you just have to take what resonates and leave the rest and start small with your own experimentation. I think this is a great way to start. Joining me in my wearing of heels or also wearing a color that you know probably would look good on you, but you've always been too scared to do. Or taking your neutrals, your blacks, and your whites and deciding that we're going to go brown, navy, and cream for the fall. Gorgeous. Just the sound of that sounds beautiful. Something else that I am doing to mess up my own timeline is I'm going to be taking a class I have mulled over the idea of doing Toastmasters for years. It's something that I was introduced to a very long time ago, like over a decade ago. And when I was at one of my corporate jobs, they actually had a live Toastmasters group on site. So it's pretty common actually for some corporations to host their own. So those are not open to the public and you just meet with people that work with you. It's usually like bigger corporations that kind of pay for the license and host their own Toastmasters. And for those of you that don't know what Toastmasters is essentially a global group and association that helps you improve your public speaking and leadership skills in a very supportive and friendly environment. It's for seasoned speakers or people just starting out. The club basically allows you to get better at public speaking in a very supportive way because you are with people that are all trying to learn and get better at the same time. It's very inclusive, it's diverse. Any age can join, any corporate level, any socioeconomic status, like it doesn't matter. And it's all over the world. And this is something, like I said, I've thought about a long time ago. I didn't do it when it was hosted at my corporate job at the time. This was back in Toronto because I had joined a different professional development club. But I really think that now's the time. I want to be better at speaking. Speaking is something that I love. And I like the idea of essentially putting reps in. I really believe in that. This would be my gym. This is essentially my vocal gym. And it's a way that pushes myself outside of my comfort zone 1000%. Because yes, I do speak, but I really speak to people that I know on content, stuff like that, and not necessarily getting like huge feedback back. So this would be different. And the beauty of Toastmasters, or, beauty or downfall, depending on how you look at it, is you are often called to speak on things on the spot. So there's an improv aspect to it as well. Sometimes you do have tailored speeches that are very short, 5 to 7 minutes long, but often you are called to speak on the spot. So it really does test kind of your mind-body connection and kind of forces you to think quickly. And I like that idea. I want that muscle memory. I want to be in the gym for that, if that makes sense. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm going to do the heels thing. This is my new thing. Like, not all the time, not everywhere, but I am committed to wearing heels more often because I have them and they're just sitting there and I don't want to sell them. So it's like, what's the solution here? And the solution is I need to wear them. If I'm getting in a car, can I wear heels with this outfit? Can I, at least make that attempt? So anyways, these are my personal things of how I'm basically going to mess up my own timeline. And I hope you guys liked this episode and last week's episode on how to be more interesting. I hope that this was helpful. I know that it was a lot of information, but I do think that being more interesting and even making that attempt, like, okay, I like this. And maybe what I'm going to do is like, I always get romance novels, I'm going to try something else. Or I always read romance novels that have maybe a crime element to it. Now I'm going to read romance novels that have like a fantasy element to it. Just like expanding yourself and tickling your brain in a different way, I think is so attractive for both men and women. So anyways, I don't want to ramble on too long. You guys know where to find me at Shantel Russo at the Sage Sorority on all platforms. Don't forget to email your questions for AMA, thesagesorority@gmail.com, or pop them into the anonymous link in the show notes. I love you guys so much. Share this episode with a friend who you think could stand to be a little bit more interesting. And I love you guys lots. I will talk to you next week. Have a beautiful week and a beautiful weekend. Bye.